You're listening to Between the Wickets. Welcome to a special edition of Between the Wickets. In this three-part episode, we're diving deep into the world of U19 cricket with three talented players who represented the USA in the ICC U19 World Cup. In this episode, I'll be sitting down with Prannav, Sid, and Arya for three one-on-one conversations. Prannav, first, congratulations on representing the country in the ICC U19 World Cup and for receiving the Best Batsman Award in the ICC qualifiers. Why don't you start by talking a little bit about your experiences throughout the whole process of being a part of the USA U19 team?
Thank you, Ashwath, for having me. I think it was a really good experience. Definitely coming from an associate country to play in one of the highest level of cricket for youth in the whole world. So definitely a lot of learnings. Working with world class coaches. Other my teammates, and definitely competing against the world's best.
How did the coaching staff really support and guide the team throughout the tournament?
I think definitely, our coaching staff, they knew a lot of us from before, from other various youth tournaments. So, it wasn't like we were put with the coach that we didn't know. So I think that was a good thing that the coaches knew us. And I think the coaches definitely, did their part, definitely kept us, on our toes, on the field, off the field. And, I think they definitely did play a big role, especially in those qualifiers and as well in the World Cup.
So when you were playing these games, was there any aspect of added pressure because of the name of the World Cup and then obviously playing international teams that you've seen on TV?
I think, definitely there's a little bit of nerves, especially playing those big countries such as India and Bangladesh. But personally, I just wanted to just go and have fun. You might probably won't get another opportunity like this to represent my country in a global stage. So, I just wanted to make the most of it and, just enjoy my time there. And then, at the same time, try to put up a good show as well.
We'll get into practice a little bit for batting, but was there any way that you prepared mentally for these big World Cup games?
I definitely did do some mental strength sessions before going to the qualifiers and the World Cup. Just making sure my mind was in the right space, and to make sure that I wasn't really thinking about too many added things, especially playing the qualifiers and World Cup. So I think I definitely did do some mental strength training.
I know a couple seasons ago that you batted sort of in a different way. I know you kind of switched and became more positive, a little bit more attacking. How did the switch really come about, and how were you able to practice in a way to really implement it in games?
I'd say I think about 3 years ago, I used to bat a little differently than how I do now. And I think a lot of it, the change, really came from, really analyzing my own game. Seeing the way I practiced and the way I played in games was completely different. In practice, I would be fearless, playing all my shots, but in games, I would be a little bit less risk taking. But I figured out that if I'm successful in practice, hitting those shots, playing fearlessly, I should be doing that in games as well. So once I started implementing that in games, I think I definitely saw a change in my batting. But I think again, it's important to find balance. You can play positively, but at the end of the day, you still have to score runs. So I think by finding that balance between playing positive, but also, batting for 50, 60, 70 balls for your innings.
So is there a way you changed it at all at practice before taking it to games, or were you just bring whatever you were already doing in practice to the games?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was bringing what I was doing to practice to games. 'Cause I think in games I was taking a little bit more added pressure, even if it was just a club game or a youth tournament. But I think it was mainly just taking what I'm already doing in practice over to the games.
And then talking a little bit more about practice, I know a lot of people who spend hours in the nets, they're constantly doing drills, practicing whatever. But then when they go to the match, it doesn't really correlate. They'll get out early or maybe a mental mistake. Is there a way that you suggest practicing in the nets that can help fix that issue specifically?
I think practice, definitely differs from person to person. Some people, they need to play a lot of balls before a game. And then, some people just need to feel a couple balls. So I think for me, the main thing about practice isn't really about the amount of balls I play, but it's more of how I feel. So Some days I'll be in the nets for 2, 3 hours just to make sure I'm getting that feel. But once, if I get that feel immediately, I'm not really in the nets for that long. But I think the important thing is to, keep doing it over and over again. So I think, definitely practicing every day, like day in, day out, once, twice a day. But I think the main thing is that after I end every session, I should have like a feeling that, I was hitting the ball well. So I think that's like the biggest thing for me.
Is there anything you do like after the session, like writing down anything right after you practice, or is it mostly the mental, like learning from what you did last time?
After practice, I'm not really a big writer after, but definitely after games, I'm always analyzing. I'm like talking to a coach, no matter how much I score in a game, the next day, I'm always, messaging the coach or on the phone with them. And you're just talking about, like what I think I did good, what I think, I need to improve on. Analysis comes from, at least for me, comes more after games.
I mean, obviously, we're talking about practice so much. I know you've been playing since like a very long time, very young age, and that's throughout middle school, high school. So, how did you really find that balance between practicing, but then obviously, like, a lot of us have school commitments as well, like you have to study for a test or something. Maybe you have a game on the weekend, but you also have to study. So, how did you find that right balance between school, especially in high school? It gets much harder. Obviously, still practicing cricket and playing all these games.
I didn't really find it too difficult, definitely to balance my time. But I think that the biggest thing for me was that I always enjoyed practice. Like it was never something that, it was like a burden to me. Like, I got home and I'm like, oh man, I have practice today. It was more like, oh, I want to practice today. So I think the biggest thing is that I feel like we got a lot of young cricketers really enjoy practice and like have that like fire in them to like want to practice every day. I think that it'll help a lot in time management. Like they'll make some changes, change up their schedule a little bit just in order to get a practice session in. So I think that was the biggest thing for me.
I know the World Cup, you had like so many games against like big teams, and then also in the qualifiers, you guys played like Canada and other countries like that. You have any like experiences or any funny moments? Not, it doesn't have to be funny, but anything that you think was like really interesting, maybe about another team or like about your team interacting with others, or was there like any player that you found pretty interesting, like the way they go about their work?
I think the biggest thing was definitely when we were playing against India. I got out early that game, so I was just trying to see, how they were in the field. And I think the biggest thing was a lot of times here, especially our bowlers, fast bowlers, their mark is around near the 30-yard circle. But, they're coming from fine legs, so they have to walk all the way to the pitch, hand their cap to the umpire, and then walk all the way back. But what India would do is that's the slip cordon on the other side. So this one of the slips would run all the way to fine leg, like on the other side, get their hat, and then they would come to slip. But before coming to slip, they would give their cap to the umpire and then come to slip. So the bowler would just have to walk from fine leg to their mark. So, those are small things. And then those fielders that fine leg third man, those might not be like the important positions, like at least in America, we tend to think the important positions like extra covers, mid wicket, long on. But even those fielders at third man fine leg, as soon as they see at the bat, like the batsman, like, breaking their wrist, they're already moving 3 steps to their left and, cutting down singles. So those small things, I think we were just mind blown. These small things. And I guess that's what makes a professional team and makes professional players.
Were there any like players that you maybe you're playing India or Bangladesh or something? Was there any player that you just like kind of sat back and said like, wow, how are they going about their batting like this or their bowling or even their fielding? Was there anybody that stood out to you?
I think someone that stood out to me was, definitely Mushir Khan. The way he played the sweep shot. We had a good set of spinners on our team as well. And, he was playing the sweep from fine leg all the way through cow corner. So I think definitely after seeing him play the sweep shot so consistently, it kind of made me, like think like, wow, this sweep shot is such a good shot. Like he would sweep the square leg, mid wicket would move a couple steps square. Then he would get like out to the line of the ball, sweep in front of square, get two more. And it's not even he's getting bounded, he's just getting doubles, and just keeping the scoreboard ticking. When I went to practice after the World Cup, I really made it an importance to practice a sweep. Just seeing after like how effective it was for him.
So obviously you guys did play for USA, and then a couple months later we have the World Cup here hosted in the US. And then last year we had Major League, and this year again the second edition of Major League happened. All of this is bringing cricket to the forefront of America. What do you think this really brings to USA cricket? And what's your perspective on USA cricket right now?
I think, definitely it's good for USA cricket. More people know about the sport. I think the biggest thing for me was seeing, like, scrolling on Instagram and seeing channels like Bleacher Report and ESPN, posting about cricket, which are, predominantly like football, soccer, basketball type social media channels. So seeing them post about cricket, was really, really nice to see. So I think it's good that, it's getting more popularity. And I guess just in more time, we'll see cricket, come up in college, more stadiums come up, more local teams come up as well.
For Major League specifically, is there anything you think that really brings that's really like interesting that is different to maybe like playing a World Cup?
Yeah, so definitely, I think when the U.S. players, were able to be part of major league squads, just to be able to play on the same team as, some world class players, I think it's just a different feeling, and especially the amount of youths that played. There were almost like I think almost 8 under 23 players that were part of major league squads. So just being able to rub shoulders with some of the best, just picking up on those little things. Because I think, after an age like after 1920, the skill set is usually the same among all the players, but it's just those small things, that make a legend, and then just a good player, a good player.
Obviously, you're kind of in that stage now. You have minor league. I bet you're aspiring for Major League and USA as well. How are you preparing yourself to be able to play? On one hand, you have Major League, which is a T20 league, and then USA, which also does play some 50 over games. So, how are you preparing yourself to be able to play in the league and for USA nationally?
Yeah, I think again it's just continuous practice. I think the biggest thing is just keep hitting balls, keep hitting balls. I think the eventual goals would be to play for the men's USA team and as well as play in Major League. And those are, a 50 over and a 20 over competition. But I think, at least for me, I think when you like break the game down, like between batting in a 50 over game and batting in a 20 over game, it's pretty much the same. So I don't think it's too big of a difference, or my technique or my mindset needs to change at all. I mostly like when you break it down, is still the same game. So I don't think it's too big of a difference practicing for either.
So you said like between 220 and 50 overs, you kind of go about it the same. Is there a way that you differ? Maybe if you're going, I know you predominantly go open, but sometimes maybe if you're in a different team, some teams like maybe they already have two set openers. Is there a way that you would change how you go about your innings if maybe you're like two down, three down?
Yeah, definitely. I think your approach and mindset definitely has to change, to the game. Like if I have a game tomorrow, the mindset that, I'm thinking about and getting ready for is probably not going to be the same as when I, walk out to bat. So I think the biggest thing is, being able to adapt according to the pitch, according to the team, the situation. So I think the biggest thing is being able to adapt, but always having like a general plan, like in the back of your mind.
For like let's say you're opening the batting, right? I know some people like to take their time early, maybe leave a couple, get their eye in. Some people just try to like look for boundaries early to get them set. What's your way of going about opening an innings? Are you looking for those early boundaries? Or are you trying to just rotate a bit in the beginning and then see where that takes you? What's your mindset when you're open?
Yeah, I think everyone wants to get like 2 3 boundaries in the first 10 balls while opening. Then they're they feel pretty set. But I think the biggest thing for me is definitely not to think too much while batting. Not just going without a plan, but obviously having a plan, but not thinking too much. I feel like I bat best when I'm not trying to force anything, when I'm just trying to play the ball. Just let the boundaries come automatically. So I think that's when I play my best cricket.
Do you like to like target certain bowlers? Like if you see like a left arm off spinner, or maybe like even right arm pacer versus left arm pacer, does that also factor into the way you go about your innings? Like, oh, he's gonna bowl later, so I can take him on. Is there anything like that?
I think definitely in T20 cricket, that's definitely there. If you're struggling against this particular type of bowler, they're only gonna bowl maybe a 2 3 over spell max. Like obviously, there's gonna be at least one bowler that you're gonna like later on in the innings, whether that's an over from now or a couple overs from now. So I think the biggest thing is understanding that you could definitely have more success, especially in T20.
Like obviously we talked about how you view USA today with all the World Cup, Major League stuff. How do you think USA cricket is gonna evolve in the future over the next couple of years, maybe even over the next decade? Where do you see USA cricket going?
I think in 10 years, I see, definitely a good domestic structure. They have some national tournaments, but I think the biggest thing in order to keep getting the best pool of players for every series or tournament that they play is to have a good domestic structure. So in 10 years, I see like a good zonal competition that, is going on for a long period of time. I think that would be one of the biggest things in order to always make sure that the best pool of talent is always playing in all these important games, whether it's T20 World Cup, 50 overs qualifiers. Yeah.
And then lastly, I know right now preparations and there's U19 for the next cycle coming up. Obviously, you can't play anymore, but what advice do you have to those young aspiring cricketers who dream of playing in the U19 World Cup like you did? Is there a process you think they should stick to following?
The biggest thing is, I would say, would just be to play without any pressure. But, obviously that's easier said than done. This is a dream for, all of these young cricketers representing the country in a global stage. I think the biggest thing would definitely just to be to, at least for the batsmen, to just to give themselves a chance. I know it'll be a little bit nerve wracking, knowing that, if I don't make runs, I might not get picked. So I think the biggest thing would just to be for all the batsmen just to give themselves a chance. And I think for the bowlers, just to go back to basics. A lot of bowlers feel like they need to take 5 wickets, in order to get picked. But, the truth is that if you're bowling well, I think that's all the selectors need to know. So I think the biggest thing would just to be to, not look for wickets, but just to do what you're doing best.
Do you have any advice for like wicket keepers who like how they can make themselves stand out? Because obviously, I know you do keep.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is, take all your catches, do that stuff. But I think the biggest thing is to bring the energy. Selectors, look for those small things, like how a wicket keeper, can bring a team back, or if a team is losing, the fielding team is losing, not in a good position, how a wicket keeper is able to, regain that energy, spark something into the fielding team.
Thank you so much for your time, Pranav, and again, congratulations on the U19 World Cup, and then obviously best batsman in the qualifiers, and I wish you the best for the future.
Thank you.